Hey, everybody, it's time for a spring garden tour. It's an absolutely gorgeous day outside, and I'm so excited to show you what we have going on in our garden so far. Right here, we have an oak leaf hydrangea that I got all cleaned up and fertilized. I still have lots of cleanup to do. Weather's been horrible. Heucheras and heucherellas here need cleanup. As you can see, this right here is their new growth, and that's what I'll be leaving on the plant. All the rest of this I'll be cutting off. It just took too much damage during the winter, so we'll clean them up and make them look all pretty, and they'll pump out new growth and be gorgeous by the summertime again. We've got Lucifer crocosmias already starting to come up. We've got natural ferns, and that stump we're probably going to turn into a stump planter this year, so stay tuned for that. In the background behind the one fern there, we have a Nandina, and on the ground there's just some stone crop, which is kind of naturally just taking over the area. Under that tent is a bottle brush, and then down the walk we have Helleborus. We will have hostas. Our brunneras are starting to come up. I planted winter wolfsbane and crocuses in the corners here. The left side is getting more sunlight than the right, so the left side's actually pumped quite a few blooms, but the right hasn't done much yet. I eventually want them to go all the way along this front edge here, but it'll be a multi-year process, probably plant like 10 to 15 each year or so. So the Helleboruses, some of them I plant, Four Seasons Gardenia, which was Jake's Christmas present. We got that planted a couple weeks ago. So back to the Helleborus. Some of them I planted in the fall, and some of them we just planted. This one we planted in the fall, but it literally just started blooming maybe a month ago. It's got these gorgeous white blooms with this speckling that's like a burgundy maroon color, absolutely perfect for Easter time. And as they age, they turn this gorgeous chartreuse green, but keep that burgundy maroon speckling. I absolutely love them. And these ones over here that I'm walking to, we just planted the same day we planted the Four Seasons Gardenia. It's called an Anna's Red, and it's got this deep, almost more purple than red flower with this variegated foliage. And then this one behind me is my absolute favorite. It bloomed all winter long, and it's got these bright white blooms with this lime green center, and as they age they turn this pretty chartreuse green, keeping that lime green center. They're absolutely gorgeous. And then we've got Jerichos, which I don't have one that's actually in bloom right now, but they start out white and they age to this chartreuse green smoky pink color, which normally I don't like pink in my landscape, but I don't mind these at all, especially not this time of year. Then we have our Four Seasons, our Yuletide Camellia. He was doing awesome, had gorgeous blooms, red with these bright yellow centers at Christmas time, and then we had some flooding and he lost all of his leaves. So I'm not sure he's going to come back yet. We're going to wait and see. If not, I'm probably still going to put one there, but maybe put him in a pot instead. And on this other side, we don't have much going on. There's lots of hostas planted in here. They just aren't coming up yet. But there's another brunnera. And then we've got these sumacs, which I do need to prune. We're trying to train them to grow as trees. And then an oak leaf hydrangea that we kind of rescued. Its root ball got infested by ants, so we're seeing whether it's going to make a comeback or not. And next to it, we have another Yuletide Camellia that Jake was actually given as a Christmas present. So hopefully this one will do better than the one on the other side of the well house. We did plant this one high to help with water retention in the roots. And then we have our spirea here, which turns beautiful colors in the fall with sumacs, some natural ferns. The crocosmias and daylilies that you see popping up out of the ground were planted years ago. And then I've got all these tulips and hyacinths and different bulbs that I didn't get a chance to put in the ground, and now I'm waiting to see what is what so that I can plant them where they go. If you saw, one had a tag in it, but all the rest of the tags blew away. This oak leaf hydrangea needs to be cleaned up still, and in front of it there I have a euphorbia which needs to be cleaned up, and then this area will need to be fertilized. And then around this side, this is the front of the well house, we have pansies that I planted in the fall, and then daffodils and tulips, which you can actually see some buds on some of them already. Zoom in kind of here. There you go. And this one over here is actually about to open. You can see its yellow coloring and everything. It's so exciting to get the first spring colors flushing out of the garden and for the garden to be waking up. Then I have 2 zebra hydrangeas in the pots flanking the well house door. This one was substantially bigger than this one over here, so I did cut the one on the left down by about 1/3 and then just cut the tips off of this one to allow them to start to equalize in size, because they flank this door, so I really want them to be roughly the same size and shape and whatnot. But I'm so excited for them to start blooming. And then down the walk, we really upped our bulb planting game this year. You can see all the bulbs planted along the walk and then along the curbside. Overall in our landscape, we planted over 10,000 bulbs this last winter. I've got some on the left-hand side here that I did not plant there, at least not this year, so they might have been from previous years. Otherwise, the mole has relocated them, which does happen to us. In fact, over here, right up against that pot, I did not plant those tulips there. So the mole decided that that was a better location for them than where I had them planted. Otherwise, outside of all these bulbs coming up, there's not much going on in this area. So we'll cross across here and give you a view from the other side. When these sumacs are in their full leafed lush form and all the crocosmias and daylilies, this area is pretty full, but right now it's pretty bare. So I'm actually thinking about adding some forsythias in, like to areas like this right here, so that we get some more spring color and some more spring interests. There's some dwarf varieties that would work perfectly in this area. And that stump back there with the stick sticking out of it, I think I'm going to plant a fern in it and just let it naturally be there. And then we've got our flowering plum, which this is the time of year that I absolutely love it. We're actually probably going to pull this out because it drops fruit and makes a horrible mess. But this time of year is absolutely gorgeous. And then the bulbs continue around the edge. Got some sandwort up against that tree there. Some more bulbs. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to put there, but then 3 more flowering plums right along this back fence, which we're also talking about taking these down. I'm hoping I can find something else that flowers in the spring, but doesn't make a mess with fruit all over the ground. Then I've got 2 more over here and then a flowering pair in between. On this front shed porch, I planted this front planter with hyacinths and daffodils and whatnot. And then this back one has a scarlet bouquet and some trailing ivy, and it had some creeping jenny and this vinca, which is alba white. I did have some other kale planted in here that was more of the like cabbage style kale, and that kale did not make it, but this upright style did a great job of performing through the winter and giving some color over here. I think I'm going to actually change this out though, leave my trailing front border edge, and then pop an evergreen in there. And then we've got the candy tuft. Some of them need to be cleaned up. They're already blooming, providing some gorgeous spring color over here. And all these bulbs that we planted along here, kind of back flanking behind the candy tufts. And then my sedums, which are cleaned up for the most part. I do need to do some like finishing touches, clean up kind of this excess that's still sticking up. But for the most part, they're cleaned up and ready to go, ready to push out new growth. And the magnolia has buds on it, so pretty soon we'll have big, gorgeous white magnolia blooms on this tree. And in behind it, we have like a chartreuse green 9-bark, and it's already starting to pump out foliage. And to the right, this one is too. This is a copertina, but it's not as noticeable as this one on the left is. And I did plant bulbs all the way along this whole edge, but none of them seem to be coming up. I'm not sure if they were just planted at the wrong time, like we didn't get them in the ground soon enough, or if they're just later bloomers or what. But we may have to try that area again. Over here, We have elderberry, which are starting to pump leaves like crazy. They look so cool. It almost looks like a berry on the end, but those are actually leaves, not its berry. This one's also pumping growth, and in behind it there we've got a Nandina that took a beating from the winter snow that we had, so we're going to have to do some staking to prop him back up. May even have to do some pruning on it and let it start over with its growth. And then this area is just natural with vine maples and ferns. And our tortoise that we got last year, his name is Todd. And you can see in our retention pond here all the mud and muck from the flood. This is one of 2 retention ponds. So when this one fills, it pumps to the one in the back. But it was, both retention ponds were overflowing. In fact, it was overflowed all the way over the sidewalk and all the way over to this wall. I was wearing like calf high boots and the water was still pouring into them. So it was a really bad flood. In this background here we have coral bark maple, which this is just striking, this red branch, and in the winter with the snow it looks absolutely amazing. To the left right there is a serviceberry that we're probably going to end up pulling out. Neither my husband or I love it. And then this green little bushy plant is a Grecian pattern plant, which we always thought we had to cover them with tents like we have right here, but actually they're hardy and they do better without the tents on them. And then over in this pot is just a bunch of pansies. It was literally just the overflow that I had that didn't make it into other planters, so I planted it all up. And then same up here, I had this hanging basket already, and I just planted it with these ivies that I didn't end up using in my fall or winter containers. It's doing a gorgeous job of growing. Then we've got another natural area with more vine maple and ferns, and we're actually going to be transplanting some of the Nandinas that you'll see in a little while over to this area to add some more color. And then I've got my twisted baby locust, which we probably are going to have to pull out. We're going to try maybe popping it into a planter and seeing whether that helps, and if it doesn't, then it'll probably have to go and I'll have to get a new one, which is a shame because I absolutely love the structure of it. But every year it gets its leaves and then they all turn yellow and they fall off within like not even a few weeks of it producing its leaves. So something's going on with it. And these tents along here are covering dinosaur plants. This is a Japanese maple that's starting to show signs of growth, but it'll be a little while before it's actually nice and lush. And then this edge I literally just have planted with mondo grass, and it's just going to eventually fill this whole section in. Along this edge, nature did us a favor and these ferns grew up. We did have this crack along the edge and we were trying to figure out how to solve it, and the ferns grew up naturally. Now we just need some to grow on this side over here. The crack is like, say maybe, let's see here, an inch and a half. I'll show you. So I'm going to try to transplant some of the ferns, but I'm not working with a lot of space right there. And along the walk, this ground cover I actually had planted in front of our well house, and it transplanted itself over here, but it's doing an amazing job of filling in the cracks between these stairs. On the right hand side, I actually, which I'll show you in a minute, I actually planted some cushion bullax. But whatever this ground cover is actually doing better than the cushion bullax is doing at the moment. I have this cushion bullax planted somewhere else though, and it thrives. So I think it just may take it a few years for it to fill in. And up here we have the same thing as the other side, just mondo grass. So we'll go up these stairs and over to this other flower bed, which I have planted with pansies and ice plants. And then that Grecian pattern plant, this is where its original location was, and it regrew even after we dug it out. In the background there, we have a Nandina tree, and on the right-hand side, we have a Japanese maple. And this Japanese maple is different from the coral bark in that it doesn't get these solid stems that are red, but the tips of all the stems are this striking red color, so it's really pretty in the wintertime, especially with the snow on it. And then over here, let's go look at this planter. We actually have a hyacinth blooming. This is a Carnegie white hyacinth. Let's see if I can get in here so you can see it. sun's kind of blowing it out. But this is a Carnegie white hyacinth, and I planted them and some daffodils and tulips in around this centerpiece that had stayed green through the winter. I actually thought it was a variety that was going to die off, but it didn't, so I worked around it. And then I have these planters, which I packed full of bulbs. And right now there's yellow mammoth crocuses and white glory of the snow blooming. There will be daffodils, tulips, hyacinths. If I had it to do over again, I would not pack the planters as full of bulbs as I did this year. It was the first year I had done it, and I did this lasagna layering technique with the bulbs, and so it allowed me to put a lot of bulbs in the planters, but I'm not loving the appearance of it. I think I'd rather have done the crocus in the shorter one and the daffodils and tulips in the taller planter, and left each planter a little more individualized. But you can see some hyacinth coming up in this one too, so they're still gorgeous displays of color. And then in the backdrop here is our secondary retention pond, and this flower bed, which doesn't have a whole lot going on. I think I'm going to plant some forsythia in there, and then I'm going to plant some tulips and some daffodils and get some more spring interest going on in there. But right now it's kind of bland. In our hanging baskets, I had ivy, creeping jenny, the ferns, and cyclamen, but so far all that survived is the ivy and the ferns. We'll see whether the cyclamen and creeping jenny make a comeback or not. Then we've got this Fire Chief arborvitae here, and some Forever Red heucheras with some white violas. And then we have my little tree. Oh, we're going to scan over here. We have this planter, which I had some plants bought for, but the frost took them. And so I need to get some different plants, clean this out, plant this up. But I'm going to make this a cute little spring planter, leaving its center place how it is. Now over here to my tree, we moved it back under the cover, which is where I had it last summer, because all of a sudden it started browning, and I'm not sure. I had it out front on my table in front of on our front porch, but I'm not sure if it was just getting too much sun or too much water, because this planter does not have a drain hole and it was out in the rain, so I couldn't control the amount of water it was getting. So I'm hoping that it's going to make a comeback back here. This I bought at Walmart. Now don't judge me. There is no way you could get this amount of plants for the price I paid. Not to mention that it had the cutest little planter. Even though it's just like a cheap plastic, this basket weave is perfect for springtime and Easter. So I ended up getting that at Walmart, and it's going to go on my front porch. I'll show you all the way around it. It's got my colors, and I'm so excited to have it as a pop color on the front porch. I just am waiting till I clean off the table. And we'll come around this side here, and I have another planter which didn't do too well. I had pansies, violas, cyclamen, and all that survived were a few violas. So I'll probably be pulling these violas out, moving them somewhere else, and then changing out what I have planted around this so that it looks nicer again. I kind of suspected that the stuff on the back was going to die off just because it doesn't get enough light. Over here we have some Cream Beauty crocuses, which I planted in this concrete planter that I got at Portland Avenue Nursery right before winter time, and I thought it'd be absolutely gorgeous for spring with the butterflies and the little floral leaf pattern on it. And then I planted up with as many bulbs as I could fit in it, so it'll be pumping out massive color through hopefully till summer starts, and then I'll take those out, relocate them somewhere, and fill it full of new plants. Probably do something red, white, and blue. Over on this side, I have my daylilies growing up in the back, which all of those are actually going to get relocated. But then we have wallflower, which I just planted a packet of seeds, and it kind of took that area over. So I'm going to be shearing all of that back. And we have black mondo grass lining the edge with blue sedge behind it. And then our Sasquatch with a false spirea in front of it. And there's another false spirea off on the right. We used to have this viburnum right here. It was absolutely gorgeous, and we lost it. But I want to get another one and try it one more time because it pumped out these gorgeous white blooms before our magnolia bloomed. So we had this like sequence of white flowering trees back here, because this tree in the front is a magnolia, in behind it is a maple, then we have a twisted or contorted filbert, and then we have another maple in the background there, a Nandina that's going to be relocated over to the other side. this on the corner is some emerald cushion, which once summertime comes, that'll be so lush and green. And then we got this massive fern, which that's just another natural fern that occurred, and so we left it there. There's a big, huge whale rock in that area. I have a sedum here that I still need to clean up. And then this Japanese maple and this rock, and during the winter time you can see the rock. Once the Japanese maple produces all its leaves, you can't see the rock anymore. And another hydrangea, and behind that hydrangea we have a Nandina that took a beating, kind of like all the rest of them from the snow. I really should have paid more attention. And then we have another oak leaf hydrangea back here, a tree style Nandina. Not much else is growing. We've got our little rock river here, and our ferns that we planted last summer did an amazing job. But otherwise, this area is mostly hostas because it's full shade. I want to bring some Helleborus into this area too, but we haven't made it that far yet. And then another Nandina and some Virginia and a Japanese maple. And then my lanterns and my planters here, which the white Nancy lamium and the pumpkin spice heuchera, did great. I'm not sure whether this hardy begonia is actually going to come back or not. We'll have to wait and see. And then I had like a chartreuse heuchera in here, and that did not make it at all. Got some ferns down on the ground around those stumps. And then we'll go around to the other side so that you can see the rest of this landscape. Oh, we have some hostas popping up. I actually didn't notice that on my walk in, but I noticed it on my walk out. And then we've got pansies planted here with an ice plant, a matching sedum to go to the other side. These are red lightning heucheras, and in behind it I had some mums, but it doesn't look like they survived, even though they were supposed to be hardy. So those will probably get pulled and replaced with something else. Then we have all this Virginia, Trilliums. I have Trilliums coming up. These are just naturally occurring in our area. They're just a white Trillium, and they're absolutely gorgeous. We've got another clump there, so I kind of just leave them where they bloom. Sometimes they get relocated closer to areas that like are stumps like that. Then we've got this flooded Virginia, which needs to be cleaned up, but since we're going to be pulling it all out, I am not worried about it at the moment. It does do its job, and it fills in this area, and it's nice and lush. But it's just not what I want here, and it's not what my husband wants here either. In fact, neither one of us really like the plant that much. In the background, I have some heucheras that have heaved, which basically means they've pushed themselves up out of the ground because of the cold, and over numerous years, their like crowns are now way up in the air. So I'll actually be replanting those. You cut them down. I'll do a video on it and show you guys, but you essentially cut it down and then replant the stalks and it'll regrow. Then we have a marmalade heuchera and ice plants again, which these ice plants are all Delmara orange ice plants. And then the Persian chocolate creeping Jenny, which these were just 4-inch plants, and they've put on so much growth. They were doing an amazing job, and then all of a sudden within the last week or two they've started to discolor. So I'm hoping they're going to make a comeback, but I may have to do some pruning on them. They are a pretty resilient plant. And then in the background I have bulbs planted. There's Rudbeckia and Echinacea and some phlox that'll come up. Then we have 2 Nandinas flanking a burning bush. The one on the left, it really took a snow beating. The one on the right actually did pretty good. On the other side of the walk here, I have mondo grass that flank the whole front of this ledged edge. And then some marmalade heucheras, some other variety of heuchera that I'm not sure what are at the moment. Pancake plants, which are these little evergreen shrubs here. And then in the background, those are all burning bushes. Down here, I have lamb's ear, which I need to clean this up. I'm going to try just cutting it back to nothing. And if it regrows, great. If it doesn't, I'm just going to change this area because over the years, this has been planted here for like 15 years and it's starting to look messy. And there's Bella walking through the landscape and trampling all my bulbs. You're going to have to give me a minute. I will be right back. Got to get her out of the flower bed. So this is our stump planter. We did this last summer, and by the time I actually got to plant it, it was kind of late in the season. I've got some creeping Jenny in here, and some heucheras, and some violas, and then it's got some rudbeckias and echinacea and Dusty Miller. And the Dusty Miller, the one that I just showed you, didn't do too bad, but that one back there is awful, and all this rudbeckia and echinacea needs to get cut down, and this one here in front, this Dusty Miller, is just looking horrible. So I'm not sure. I kind of was late in the season and worked with what I had, kind of overflow plants, so I'll probably replant that area. Now we're at my front flower bed, which off on this left hand side I have my wintergreen Japanese umbrella pine. And then behind it, I have some Asiatic lilies, and it actually looks like a few tulips are blooming up there too, which is kind of funny. And then we have a kale, an ornamental one. It's called a peacock white, which I'm about ready to pull those out, but it's amazing that they lasted. Under that cover is a dahlia, but it didn't end up getting killed off by a hard frost, so I'm not sure it's going to come back. And some more Asiatic lilies. There's some rudbeckias and some balloon flowers planted along the front edge. And then my irises and pansies, and then my hens and chicks, which they're all like red and green varieties. You can't really see how striking the color is in the video. Let me see if I can get a better angle here. Kind of see it better that way, but they're way more striking in person than they are in the video. I think I'm gonna plant a forsythia in this back area right here to give me some spring color and also a different kind of interest. And I may plant one over on the other side too, not sure yet. These flower beds are kind of a work in progress because they didn't work out the first time and they're not really balanced. I'll show you when we get to the other sides. Then I have my planters on the front porch, which I did the same thing as I did in the back and just packed them full of bulbs. In fact, if you look close, you can see the soil heaving. There's so many bulbs. But I've got some hyacinths coming up. Those are Carnegie hyacinths, and some Jeanne d'Arc crocuses. And these ones are all planted with red and white bulbs, so it'll just be this plethora of red and white flowers. Some really pretty tulips, and I actually even have some white allium that'll bloom up at the very end. And look how massive this crocus is. I mean, that's a good sized crocus, especially compared to those cream beauties that were in the back in the concrete planter. So this is the side I've been struggling with. I've got my hens and chicks here, but this edge doesn't exist on the other side. So I kind of want my flower beds to not exactly match, but be balanced to each other. And because I have this weird edge here, I can't ever get it balanced. So what I think I'm going to do is plant some iris in that edge right there, and then kind of mimic this side over here on this side. And the iris are a bearded iris called Spartan, and they're this really pretty deep like red purpley color. Got some pansies and my blue surprise, which we're just hoping that it makes it. We absolutely love this tree, but after I bought it, I did some research, and it doesn't like to have wet feet, which isn't something that's really something we can avoid here in Washington State. So I did plant it high, and fingers crossed it makes it. And I think I'm going to plant some forsythias over here too. This is the last planter, same plants as in the other front two planters, but over here I've got a hyacinth that's already bloomed up. And it's kind of funny, I have this ledge, and I didn't really realize it was going to happen, but what happened is the bulbs got pushed up under the ledge. So I pulled this one out and managed to rescue it, but now its top's all mangled. So I don't know how many other bulbs are actually shoved up under that edge. I think I'm going to just pull the bulbs out, plant them in the ground, and go with a whole nother theory for next year. So overall, that wraps up my spring garden tour. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next